Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to dive into what is honestly a massive paradigm shift currently shaking up healthcare technology. We aren't just dealing with passive chatbots that answer single questions anymore. We're fundamentally redefining how autonomous technology actually operates right alongside our doctors. If you've been following the AI space even a little bit, you know things are moving incredibly fast. But in clinical medicine, this specific leap, going from passive artificial intelligence to active autonomous medical agents, it changes absolutely everything. So let's dive right in and see exactly how this transformation is unfolding.
To really grasp this shift, we kind of have to recognize where we've been. Stanford's James Zhu recently pointed out in The Lancet that historically, AI in medicine has just been a reactive tool. Think of it like a really sophisticated calculator. It waits for a human to input data, it processes that data, and then it spits out an answer. It does absolutely nothing until a human specifically tells it to. But, well, that era is rapidly coming to an end. We're moving towards systems that don't just calculate for us, they actually collaborate with us. And this evolution isn't just some fun, shiny tech upgrade, it is desperately needed. Why? Because by 2025, the world is going to be swimming in 180 zettabytes of data, and healthcare actually makes up over a third of that. To put that completely wild number into perspective, medical knowledge is currently estimated to double every 73 days. That creates an absolutely impossible cognitive burden for human doctors. I mean, unless they've somehow evolved to stop sleeping. They're just drowning in clinical notes, lab results, and constantly updating medical guidelines. We need a system that can actively help shoulder this load, rather than just being another clunky tool a doctor has to manually manage.
So, this brings us to the solution. Agentic AI. This goes way beyond just answering questions. We are talking about systems that can perceive their environments, formulate complex plans, and actually execute sequences of actions. They have memory, and they are intensely goal-directed. So instead of just analyzing a single medical image and then shutting down, an agentic system is designed to pursue a broader clinical objective over time, autonomously taking multiple steps to actually get there. Now, this is the absolutely critical operational difference we need to focus on. A standard large language model, or LLM, is passive. If a doctor asks it to summarize a chart, it does it, and it stops. It's essentially a really smart medical encyclopedia. But agentic AI, it's proactive. Think of it more like an eager medical intern. It uses what we call a chain of thought. So an agentic system could notice on its own that a patient is due for a checkup. It could then automatically connect to the hospital's scheduling API, review the patient's deeply complex medical history, and draft a multidisciplinary care plan, all without being explicitly prompted by a human for every single one of those steps. Let's move from theory to practice for a second to really see why this matters. Consider a hypothetical patient. Let's call him John Doe, who is undergoing treatment for progressive prostate cancer. Currently, John's care is highly fragmented. His oncologist has to manually check his lab results, manually request his follow-up scans, and manually coordinate with all the other specialists. It's honestly a logistical nightmare, and it takes precious time away from actual patient care. So let's look at how an agentic system completely rewrites this journey. Watch how this automated workflow unfolds. Instead of a busy doctor endlessly clicking through screens, a collaborative team of AI agents steps right in. First, one agent uses natural language processing to autonomously analyze John's recent clinical notes. Recognizing the urgency, a scheduling agent automatically talks to the hospital's MRI calendar to prioritize a slot. But here's the most impressive part. Before booking, a compatibility agent independently cross-references John's medical history, sees he has a pacemaker, and checks the exact model to preempt any MRI safety risks. The whole shebang, multi-step reasoning using external tools, happens before a human doctor even has to intervene. And it's not just about logistical scheduling either. Agents are moving straight into acute life or death clinical care. Take the AI clinician developed for sepsis treatment. Now, sepsis is a life-threatening response to an infection where a patient's status can literally change minute by minute. Human doctors, who are already overwhelmed by data, are highly vulnerable to what's called clinical inertia, basically keeping a treatment unchanged simply because they miss tiny, microscopic shifts in the patient's condition. The AI clinician doesn't get tired. It acts as an ever-vigilant teammate, constantly monitoring the patient and dynamically recommending specific fluid and medication doses every 4 hours. The potential workflows here are staggering. I mean, in an emergency scenario, an agent can rapidly analyze EMS reports to actually allocate ICU beds before the ambulance even arrives at the hospital doors. Or think about chronic care management. It could continuously monitor your smartwatch data to detect a heart arrhythmia, immediately alerting your doctor before a major crisis happens. The entire goal here is transforming our very fragmented, reactive care into a cohesive, proactive system.
Okay, but we have to take a step back here because with greater autonomy comes entirely new and highly dangerous failure modes. We aren't just dealing with a simple bad answer from a chatbot anymore. We're looking at reasoning failures where the agent's complex, multi-step logic just falls apart. We have tool misuse, where the AI might successfully decide to query a database, but it accidentally pulls from the wrong medication list. And we face automation bias, which is a massive psychological risk, where exhausted clinicians just start blindly trusting the AI's recommendations without actually verifying them. And this highlights exactly why the leap from basic LLMs to agentic AI is so incredibly perilous in medicine. If a standard chatbot hallucinates a fact, a doctor reads it, sees it's wrong, and ignores it, right? The error stops there. But an agentic system, it can hallucinate a fact, grab a digital tool based on that hallucination, retrieve incorrect data, and then autonomously execute a dangerous clinical action based on a completely flawed chain of logic. The error literally cascades and compounds rapidly, well before a human circuit breaker can even trip. This compounding risk forces us to confront a really profound moral dilemma. Who is responsible when an autonomous agent fails? If an AI system acts like a true teammate, orchestrating multi-step care, and it makes a complex clinical mistake that harms a patient, who holds the blame? Is it the doctor who approved the final step? The hospital that deployed the system? Or maybe the engineers who designed the agent's logic in the first place? Currently, our legal and medical frameworks are totally unprepared for this. This brings us to a fascinating tension that researchers are calling the autonomy contradiction. Commercially, these systems are pitched as fully autonomous digital doctors. That's the dream. But in operational reality within hospitals, they run with near total human oversight. Why? Because we simply lack the safety infrastructure and liability frameworks to let them run wild. As one researcher bluntly put it, currently these systems are essentially 0% autonomous in high-stakes clinical settings. So, ultimately, the human clinician still holds the final moral and legal responsibility. But here's the catch. Their actual control over these opaque multi-step AI decisions is significantly weakened. This forces doctors into a very uncomfortable new role. Instead of being the primary medical detective, they're becoming AI chaperones. They have to constantly double-check, second-guess, and babysit the complex reasoning of their silicon teammates just to ensure patient safety. And ironically, this exhausting oversight completely subverts the whole time-saving promise of the technology in the first place. So as we stand on the absolute brink of this medical evolution, we're left with a massive question to ponder. The technology for proactive, multi-step, tool-wielding AI teammates, it's here. But given the compounding risks and the totally unresolved moral dilemmas of accountability, we have to ask ourselves, will agentic AI ever truly be allowed to act autonomously in life-or-death healthcare environments? Or will the human doctor always be the ultimate necessary safeguard? It's a tension that is absolutely going to define the next decade of medicine. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those tough questions, and I'll catch you next time.